Habermas's chapter on Derrida, Habermas describes grammatology as a project where Derrida is trying to go back before the beginnings of phonetic writing. And that's essentially my question, because Derrida does use phrases like writing before the letter, and it seems like Habermas takes that literally. Could you clarify what that phrase means?
You needed to know Habermas' basic view about Derrida. He's going to write a chapter on Derrida. Besides the thing he's writing, or he already finished writing, which is the case we're reading now, you cannot just trying to understand by reading this current piece that says, okay, this is my study about Derrida. And because this pre-notion that Habermas wrote a chapter about Derrida, so we want to read to find out what Habermas has to say. That's not going to do the job. You read that, but also you needed to go back to look at Habermas' basic view. What he really thinks about Derrida. What he really thinks about the issues that Derrida are trying to address. And that gets a little tricky because you needed to dig into Habermas' thing. Somewhere on a page or corner, somewhere he's going to say what he really thinks. But normally he does not let you know that. In this case, I think Habermas essentially has some pretty heavy criticism laying on Derrida, because Derrida's essential view is to disqualify or even dismiss the excellency of phonetic language, which is something Habermas held on to dearly. I mean, for Habermas, phonetic language, German, English, French, that's the heavenly language. See, nothing wrong with that. You can't mess with my language, basically, in that sense. So with this kind of background, the essential idea, Derrida trying to say this whole phonetic language is full of it. It's not good. But then Habermas says, no, this is the best thing. So within this undertone, they're not going to tell you straight, and you need to find out that. When Derrida says before writing, actually he's talking about the philosophical view of communication or articulation of things. He's not particularly talking about which language that is. If Habermas decided to say, okay, he's talking about it before the language was invented, now obviously Habermas wants to address the issue from that angle, and also that's what he wants you to follow. But for Derrida, his entire concern is not so much when the written language was invented. And his whole thing is about how reliable the phonetic writing is, how stable that is. He recognized the contradiction here. On one hand, in phonetic language, we emphasize so much on the sound side, and we never trust writing. But now we ended up in a situation, it's a writing that dominated our life. Speaking is not as important, but at the same time, we still inherited this reality that speaking, the sound is still the most important thing. To use his own expression, he's trying to deconstruct this language situation here. The situation is the difference between the spoken language and the written language, and the emphasis on the importance of the spoken language. And how does that tie into our view of the world, which is a philosophy. And that's what Derrida tried to solve. But I think most of the people are not willing to go that far. And you can tell in Habermas, he's always trying to redirect, because he does not want to really face the central issue that Derrida tries to do. Because essentially Derrida is saying the entire phonetic language, along with its structure, its history, that all ties into philosophy. And the philosophy is essentially ontology. And none of that is valid. It's not there. Who wants to deal with that? Of course, Habermas is not going to start there. Say, okay, let's see how bad our language is, how much we're living in the virtual reality, parallel, a double, as Foucault says. We have a life, now we have a double reality that is created by text, the language. To this very day, no one really has to deal with that. No one wants to talk about it.